Still Loading podcast is brought to you by the wonderful people on Patreon. Amazing people like Eric H., Matt aka Stormageddon, Kevin from the Bit by Bit Foundation, Gilmer, Stephen P., and Mr. Biscuits have been all wonderful enough to support the show over on Patreon. So if you would also like to get your name read at the beginning of the episode, along with a bunch of other goodies, go over to patreon.com/stillloadingpod and check out everything it has to offer. On this episode of Still Loading, John Stalker. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval, and on today's episode, I have a wonderful guest for you. He has been in the voice industry for many a year and has worked on some of your favorite shows and mine, and, in particular, that, it kind of fits the taste of this podcast. He is the voice of Toad from the Super Mario Super Show, but he's done a lot of other voiceover work. Joining me today is John Stalker. John, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks, Josh. And how are you?
I'm doing fine and dandy. Yeah. I'm having a lovely Monday morning right now, so I'm good. Things are looking good. Things are looking up.
And it is summer and it's warm, and that's important.
How is it up your way? It is brutally hot down my way.
We had a scorcher of a past week.
Yeah.
29 Celsius would be 90, low 90s. Yeah, it was real hot. But usually along with those muggy days, you get a little bit of rain at night, so it cools it off a little bit. It's a wonderful season anyway. I'm not shoveling anything.
Right.
So I'm a happy guy.
Well, I'm happy to have you on, and I'm grateful to get to speak to you. My first question for you is, I'm going to start specifically with the Mario Super Show. Then I want to kind of branch into more broad strokes about your career so far. I guess the first question here about the Mario Super Show, because Toad's voice is super iconic. I honestly think your performance of it kind of set at least the template for what even Nintendo would use in their games, like that. Kind of like how would you describe it? Like there's definitely a bit of
it's a falsetto.
Yeah.
You're at that high pitch, but sometimes in falsetto, though, there is no nuance. I tried to instill a little more nuance into just a standard falsetto delivery. And that's why he doesn't get really loud ever. I don't know. I can't remember. I don't think he ever gets really highly emotional, because your voice, the more you push a voice, the harder you push it, the less range you get. Right? It's like standing at the back of a room yelling to somebody across the room. There's very little nuance in that delivery. Get over here. But if you say it very quietly, get over here. See, there's a different music in it. And so by not pushing him too hard, I managed to create something that I could really, that was very nuanced, I think.
I find Toad a really amusing character. I find your performance really perfect for it. And the reason I had you on for this, besides the fact that you have worked on video games themselves, but obviously the video game cartoons, is that currently on my show, I'm doing a rewatch of the Legend of Zelda cartoon and the Super Mario Super Show, where once a month, me and my friend Dexter will watch through the whole episode and break it down beat by beat. And that's kind of like our, so we just do it once a month. And so actually, as of today, I recorded one of the Super Mario Super Show episodes yesterday. So I was really happy to have you on just kind of at the start. We're only on episode 3, so we're nice. Working our way slowly through it. But even
like 62 to go, right?
Yeah, right. We're only doing this once a month and alternating those months with the Legend of Zelda cartoon. So we're only going to get up to like episode 13 by sometime next year. But then it'll be all nothing but Mario on a monthly basis. But even on the first episode, it's the one where Toad is captured by a cheap or by a birdo, and who thinks Toad is her baby. And there's moments in that episode where like Toad is so indignant, and there is so much range in your delivery of it. I just found it endlessly amusing. Like specifically like when he's like, "I'm not your baby." I'm not a voice actor. I can't do voices, but "I'm not your baby." Just so mad, but I found it so endlessly amusing with
Yeah,
your
thank you.
performance with that.
Well, thanks.
Um, in terms of an actual question, instead of just kind of stating what I liked about it, how much of the process of recording of the Mario Super Show do you remember? How much of the source material were you given prior to recording it, or maybe during working on it?
Well, first of all, let me take a step back from even your initial question. Discovering the voice. I was called in to audition,
Okay.
right? And we just sort of played around. There have been a few characters in my career. Pleased to say that the ones where I was given the opportunity to help create were some of the most popular ones even to this day, and Toad was one of them. That the doing the falsetto voice was not what I had intended to do, but I mean he was so small and so little that I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make him almost childlike, right? And I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to give him that whiny, a little bit whiny kind of,
Yeah.
you know, a little petulant child sound in so much of it that's sort of what came out, and it was they loved it. I don't even remember who did the actual casting. I think director was Greg. Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember his name. The voice director, I can't even remember it. I would if I were given a list, I'd be able to pick it out. But
I'll see if I can
Greg
look it up for
Morton,
you
I
while
think
you're
it's Greg
talking.
Morton. I think we did it in a little studio in Toronto, and which is now, you know, not even considered north anymore. Toronto's so mammoth, but it was a
Mm.
lovely little, and it was called, the studio is called Master's Workshop. They did a lot of religious music, Christian
Okay.
choral music. Anyway, Toad's about as far away from that as you can get. And but it was kind of one of those natural things. It happened with Beastly as well, where I was given a good say in developing. Right, I saw a picture, and sometimes a picture gives you an idea. And again, Toad was minuscule, and so I knew I had to give him kind of he had a baby face, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to
Yeah.
give him that, and that just one thing led to another. And I like to think I'm creative in terms of finding a voice. I've done it many many times, and I mean I think that's part of my success is that I can come up with something different and not just the same read. Like my commercial work is basically my commercial work. Animation is so totally different, but yeah, that's that's sort of how the personality developed, or what I got from the personality, and that manifested itself in the vocal delivery.
Mm. I see. I see. You mentioned before about how you went in for an audition, and you were just kind of, they asked you what did you have for Toad when you saw a picture of him. I saw another interview you did a couple months back where you talked about how when you would go on in for auditions, that sometimes they would just show you mock-ups of characters and just
Right,
be like, "Hey, what do you got for this?" So
right.
I wanted to ask you, if when that happened, were there any types where you would see a character and you could see the character type and you're just like, "Oh man, there's just, why are you asking me to do this? I don't know if, I don't think I'm a right fit for this right off the bat." Or did you look at that as kind of a challenge? Like, were there characters that you would see and just know from the character design you were going to have a hard time finding a voice? Or was it always just this fun challenge for you to kind of figure it out?
Um, no, I always looked at it as a challenge. I've never found it intimidating. I've done some
Mm.
pretty weird stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with the cartoon series Redwall.
Yes, actually, that's one of my favorite
Is
series. That was the reason. So I started reading the Redwall books because I first saw the show Redwall
it?
and really liked it. And then when I saw you worked on it, I went, "Oh, how about that? You were one of the I forget. I saw your credit. You're one of the friars, though. One of the
I
members of
was
the."
Abbott Moldafus or something. I can't remember. But in the third season, I was Clog. And Clog's weird sort of, they said, "Oh, I don't know, this is really weird." And we worked, man, I was sweating my, you know what, off.
You can swear on here if you want
That's
to.
okay. Everybody knows what I mean anyway. Um, yeah, I mean, I worked really hard on it, and I could, and it was a creation that, and the director was wonderful, Ray Javelis. He was just a wonderful guy. I don't even know if he's still around. I hope he is. I hope he hears this, contacts me. Anyway, uh, but we worked on this weird. I don't know if you're familiar with Clog with the voice, but it's like this weird guttural. It's like it isn't. It's an accent, but it's totally made up. And
Hmm.
when every time I went into the studio, I would have to get the engineer to play. It's called a reference. Hey, so and so, play my ref, and they would give me 15 seconds of what Clog said, what my of something they felt was a quintessential
Okay,
speech, and I would okay, I get it. No, give me one more time. Okay, I'm there, and then I would be able to read the script because it was so unusual. Never that's a one and only where I actually had to hear it every single time. But that's
interesting,
part of the yeah. That's part of that creative thing. And I'm not patting myself in the back, but you've got to have that if you're going to be a successful animation performer because you're required to do different things all the time. And then like you to double and triple and quadruple sometimes in roles. So you've got to, you and the engineer have to figure out what you can do with your vocal cords and what they can do with high tech equipment to make you sound as different as possible. You're working as a team that way.
hmm
And, but yeah, I mean, that's part of the package. Um, and to find a voice, man, I just looked at again to look at Clog, and he's such a weird looking dude, and so there was no way he was going to have a standard delivery, no matter how funny it was, and and though sometimes you see that's how do I put this? See, if you got a picture of it's a big fat guy, right? Can I say
yeah,
can I say
yeah.
fat? I can say
It's fine. It's fine.
okay. You got a big, very not skinny guy,
There you
uh,
go.
and the tendency would be to give him a voice like that. But sometimes in animation, what you'll see is, to play against the visual. And
Hmm.
that can be interesting, and that happens more and more in these. Back in the day, we didn't do that. It was back in the day. It was you played more to the actual what the character looked like, what it gave to most people,
Hmm.
and about 20 years ago, which I guess would still be back in the day, just back in another day, and more things happened in terms of going against that 25 years ago, even. Um, and so now you get even a broader range of deliveries for the same character. I mean, visually they're not going to change the character. Here's the mock-up. Here it is. Here's a cell, an early cell. This is what he does. This is what he looks like. This is his height. This is his stature.
Hmm.
And you kind of you want to go with that, or you can go against it. I know when I'm directing and or casting and um, whatever. Even if I'm teaching a student to do animation, I'll say, don't always go with that. Sometimes it can be very interesting that you can think fat, but speak skinny, if you will. Think tall, but speak short.
I
Sounds
gotcha.
weird, but you know, what we think manifests itself. If because all we're doing is communicating, and there's so many different ways to communicate. that what we think in our heads comes out. It's the same as when you're talking to someone. Someone, it's like reading between the lines, if you will. Someone says,
Hmm.
he's saying this, but I get a feeling. Okay, but so that's the kind of thing I mean when you're trying to develop a character. You sometimes have to approach it on a bunch of different levels and think a little bit outside the box. Today, you're given more specific and explicit directions. Okay, he's this, he's that. When he gets angry, he does this, and when he's so and so, he
Okay.
does that, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so you're kind of locked in a little bit more to giving them what they want, as opposed to uh, creating a little bit more of the character. That's not to say it doesn't happen, because there's creativity in every character, but that's the you know that's what happens. That would happen with Toad. Again, it happened with Beastly, with Clog, Ultron. When I did Ultron in the Avengers, that was like, I was, going in thinking about a guy with a big, deep voice, and something completely different happened to be the result. Right? Not that he spoke with a squeaky, girly voice, but
Yeah.
but that was different. Like doing that was like, something I hadn't even thought about doing.
When it's something you mentioned about how now they are a lot more specific with their characters, like they give you a lot more detail as to how a character would react in certain situations.
Mhm.
Not saying, which one is, they both are good approaches, but do you have a personal preference? Do you enjoy the specifics given to you, or do you enjoy the kind of feeling out the character and kind of applying a little bit more of yourself into it?
Well, you know what? They're both, I don't know, they're both valid. And I'm not the boss. I'll do whatever they say. But of course, I mean, I like to put a little bit of my personality into it. So they're all a little bit John Stalkery, in a
Hmm.
way. So that's the common denominator. And so no matter what they give me, I'm still going to make it a little bit me. I'm still going to add my personalities, which is going to dictate um, the the character of the animated creature, whatever it
Hmm.
is, or the guy, the dog, the bear, the dinosaur, whatever it is, right? So I don't really care. I think the people who create the characters initially don't mind, as long as you don't stray from what they initially thought.
Yeah.
And also, you got to figure, if I make it sound better, you think I'm going to get credit for it? They're probably going to take credit for it. Yeah, we had John do this thing. I'll tell you, it was like this, it was that, right? They can get credit for it. I don't care. I mean, for me, I got the gig, I get paid. Goes on my resume. I feel good. I get a job. I go to work. That all those things are, a good part of an actor's life. That's what you want to do. So they can do anything they want. It's the same thing happens in the commercial industry. And you still, although a little bit less, because it's less free form. But
Hmm.
there's a little bit of me in every spot that I've done, every spot I've recorded. There has to be.
Have you also brought up a little bit ago about the, working with as a team with everyone when you do these performances. And one of the questions I had was how when you're working on a character, regardless of what it is for, how much of that is collaborative between you and the director? And you've worked on I'm going to bring this transition into this in a little bit, but you have worked on both sides of the booth, as it were, as a
Yeah.
voiceover director and as obviously an actor. How much collaboration is done between the director and the actor to kind of find the character, or I guess maybe even the writers involved with that, or just like how much of collaboration is involved with that?
Often the writers are in on a session. They don't
Okay.
say much, but often they're in and they can comment if they want. Um, uh, I mean, I have, see, as a director, you've got to know the entire script. As an actor, you can gloss through the script and highlight your lines and study them. I mean,
Hmm.
you should know contextually. It can make a big difference how you deliver a line, and you're not even in the scene, right? Um, because if somebody says, "But I don't like strawberries," right? But I don't like,
Yeah.
but I don't like strawberries. See, there's a difference between You know, that statement depends upon what's gone before or may impact upon what's about to come on. The emphasis changes, so you've got to know the context. So that's what a voice director has to do, has to know how every line is delivered. So when I hear something delivered that to me doesn't sit right, then I'll say, you did this, I think you should do that. And for me, I want the performer to say, yeah, John, but the so and so and so and so. And in that case, I might say, you know what? You're 100% right. Thank you. Let's go with that. Or I might say, okay, but so and so and so and so. And they will say, I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. And then what's often done in animation is we use alternates. I'll say,
Yeah.
because again, I become the guy that's going to look good if that performer delivers the line. Great, I'm going to look like crap if he delivers it improperly or incorrectly, right?
Hmm.
So I'm going to take credit for it. Hey, there was a good delivery on that line. Yeah, I know. Uh, so I want to look good too, right? And so their performance impacts upon what those who are overseeing the entire project think, right?
And
So that's we always work together, and again, a good director will accept an alternate from a performer. I'll ask, can I do this as an alternate? Yeah, that's interesting. Sure, why not? Because again, I'm going to look good. Here's two takes. Oh yeah, they're both valid. We'll think about it. Or one, it may be a volume issue, right?
okay.
Right? No, I want it said really quietly. You're a jerk, right? Because you don't know, is he just turning away? Is he doing something? You're a jerk, right? Different.
Yeah.
They mean different things. So if there's no indication as to perspective, like the distance perspective, then you put both in, and then you cover your
Makes
ass,
sense.
because when you've got to call somebody back. That's money, and the
Hmm.
less money you have to tell, well, you got to tell the producers, they'll say, geez, there are 5 lines wrong here. We got to call them back. If you got alternatives on them, or you can validate the delivery, then they don't have to call the performer back, because you open that studio, you've got the studio, you've got the performer, you've got your voice director, you've got engineers got to be hired. That's a lot
Hmm.
of money just to bring somebody in, and it happens because you look at the broad spectrum. There's you're talking about millions of dollars, and here we're talking about 500, maybe, but still, it's
That
money
yeah, it's still money.
and
You
inconvenience.
yeah. Um yeah, I could imagine like bringing everyone together for like 5 lines. Some people might not always appreciate that. I could understand that. Um I was going to ask you mentioned before when you are directing and you're kind of giving direction to the actors. The way you described it almost sounds like you're because I know you teach voice acting as well. It almost sounds like you're almost like coaching without actually like teaching without actually teaching, if that makes sense. Because the
Yes.
way you described it almost sounds like you were trying to get the actor to think about why their character is doing the things they're doing, and
Yeah.
not just simply here's your voice, and trying to critically think a little bit more um, about that role. How much of a voice director's job is just kind of like not reteaching makes it sound patronizing. I don't mean it to denigrate the voice actors or anything like that, but how much of being a voice director is kind of like teaching, as it were.
Well, thank you. That's an interesting question, because it is teaching as well. Because the next time something similar comes up, in terms of responding to something, and I would say this happens more in commercial work, because
Okay.
more than in animation, because again, it's more free form. There's sort of no right or wrong in animation. You can almost justify anything, right, to an extent. Any kind of delivery, you can say, well, this, that, and the other. In commercial work, it's very rigid. You can't say available at .com. The producer, director would look at, what are you doing? I was kind of trying to be creative. Um, no. Oh, what do you want? Available at .com. Yeah, that's it. Well, that's not creative, that's following the norm, following the process. There's a right and a wrong in commercial read, right? So if I'm giving a lesson and I say no, you can't, you got to resolve the spot by saying .com or .com. There are only 2 or 3 ways to deliver that line, and so it's not just this spot; it's every one you do is gonna. You have to do it that way, or your read simply is wrong. In
Mm.
animation, again, you've got a little more freeform. You got a weird character who may use upspeak and talk like that, and when he well, that's in sort of a normal life. It's an extension of somebody's character, habit or whatever it is, or someone's just mannerisms, but. You can validate it. Well, I'm just giving it that, different thing. And I can't say, no, that's wrong because it's a cartoon character.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to duplicate, I've been called into like, okay, this is the voice we got right now. We love the guy. We want him to sound similar, but he doesn't do this, or he's got sick and da 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 da. So we got to replace him. Well, then you're locked into doing that style, right? Then you're locked in. But otherwise, you start like with Toad or any of the other guys. There's a certain pattern that they develop, and if they like it, and again they pat you on the back and say, "Hey, just do what you do, man. That's right. It's all good," and you just sort of continue. But to the lesson thing, I mean, everything is sort of a lesson. I mean, it's all a little bit actor's studio. Put yourself in that position. And again, this applies to commercial too. You're talking about Home Depot, and hey, that's what are you doing with all the lumber there, Bill? Right? Well, I just went to Home Depot and did a thing. Wow, were they good? Oh, better than good. So it's I don't know.
Man, you're going to
It's
make
always
me have to charge Home Depot for that ad read.
if they hire me, I owe
you
you.
you hear that, Home Depot? You hear that delivery? um,
Here's on me.
uh, something that just popped into my mind with that, working with actors and coaching and whatnot. One thing that I was listening, I was listening to something else, like watching some YouTube video, and it got me thinking about this one element of acting, which I think is, I don't know, I never hear people talk about it. How do you get over self-awareness? And what I mean by that is, like, when you're doing big animated performances, I most people, I would argue, have that little voice in the head. You're like, no, you can't be this loud. Adults don't act that way, type of thing, and kind of get over yourself and real. Obviously, you're in the booth. No, everyone behind the booth doesn't care. This is part of the job. Like, voice actors have to be animated and have to kind of be over the top to an extent, because you actually said in a different interview, excuse me, it's animation, so you have to be animated.
Mm-hmm.
So for whether it's for yourself or whether it's how you coach people, how do you help yourself or others to get over that level of self-awareness, to kind of ignore that inner voice of like, this is so silly, you're being too crazy right now, type of thing, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. But you know what? I don't know. Unless you're a real newbie, I can't imagine someone going through that. You're going in there, you got to be creative. You got a funny little voice that you're doing, or you've got a character that has been delineated. You've got to do this. I mean, I don't think I've ever, honestly, and I've done just, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of voices. I don't think I've ever gone in and thought I was being stupid or over the top or anything else. I think maybe this is what separates a successful performer from one who isn't. I think the people I know who are successful go in feeling confident that they can kill it if they when they go in. You have to go in with that positivity. I don't go in doubting myself. I don't think ever. If I'm hired, I got what they want. If I don't get hired, I didn't have it, or it was down to 2 or 3 and they liked all 3 of us, but the girl they hired sounds better with this other guy. So they have their reasons for not hiring me. But if they hire me, they like what I did. That's all.
Hmm.
And I just keep doing it. That's all. I'll let the director or if the producer's in the room or writer say, you got to tone it down because I didn't write it this way or I don't see it that way. I'll get those directions if I go over the top a little bit, or I've probably said it myself a bunch of times. Okay, you're a little pushy. Remember that his relationship with her is, he's a little intimidated generally by her. So don't
Hmm.
push so hard. Remember that there's always that little thing where she's going to ultimately try to get the better of you or push you around. So keep that in mind and deliver the line again. Right?
I th- I think in me asking that I'm projecting a little bit because I've never tried to be an actor, just to be clear, but I've taken like improv classes and stuff, and that was always like a mental hurdle for myself of trying to kind of get over that type of thing. So I was kind of asking for myself, but also like when I saw it in a YouTube video, I'd never heard it put that way before, of like getting rid of that self-awareness almost. So that was some cool, interesting insight. Thank you. Uh, Not kind of switching gears to a different role of yours, and this is I don't know how often you get asked about this, but it's one of my personal favorite shows as a kid, The Busy World of Richard Scarry.
Uh,
You were Father John Cat, the father of Huckle and I guess Lowly's kind of, I don't know what Lowly is, the worm, but
slowly the
uh,
world. Yeah.
yes. What I mean, I don't I hate asking the question, what was it like working on that? Because it's such a vague kind of general thing, but like I don't know what was it like working on that? Do you have any memories surrounding your time working on that show?
I had two roles. I think it was Father Cat and Humperdinck
The
as
baker,
well.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. And I listened back, and I think they sound a little too much alike. But that's hindsight from probably 35 years ago, or 20, 30 maybe. Yeah,
It,
maybe.
it's a first season was 93, so you're looking at 31.
Ouch. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, busy. I think I did. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I did that for Sinar. The company was called Sinar,
Hmm.
and Sinar was bought out a number of years ago.
They are currently owned by this company called Wild Brain.
Yes, yes, correct. Wild Brain was bought out. Michael Hirsch, who was one of the owners of Nelvana. Michael
Yep.
Hirsch, Claude Loubert, not Claude Loubert, Patrick Loubert, and oh gosh, I should know the guy I know the best. I can't remember his name. Anyway, yeah, Michael, when Nelvana splintered, Michael bought Sinar, and then ultimately, I think, sold it to, I think Nelvana bought it. And then, those properties kind of make the rounds. But I did it in Montreal. Those are the days, of course, that's pre digital. So
Hmm.
I would have to train in to do it.
Okay.
And I was living in Toronto back then. I think did you say 93? I had maybe just moved out of Toronto.
That's when it released, so I would assume it was being
Yeah.
recorded in like what, 92 or something like
Yeah,
that.
something like that. Yeah, I was living in Toronto. I moved, 32 years ago, I moved rurally, and I'm still
Hmm.
right now. I like it way, way, way more. And
I feel you on that. That's where my wife and I are searching for a house right now. We want a rural place. I don't I don't want I don't like the city.
oh my God, and Toronto is like insane. It's
That's what
it's
I've
now
heard.
yeah, it's the fourth largest city in North America now. We surpassed Chicago about a year and a half ago.
That's wild.
Yeah, Mexico City, Los Angeles, New York, Toronto.
That's crazy. I didn't know it was, when you said North, I totally forgot Mexico City would be part of North America. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, I know. It's yeah, and it's getting crazier and crazier. I hate driving in now. I'll take the train, or I'll drive to one of the commuter train stations and take and do that. Anyway,
Hmm.
that's not what we were talking about. Um, but yeah, I would go to Montreal, and I'm not fact, I took the train. I was at that point. I had was it back then or just into that period? I actually took an apartment in Montreal because I was going back and forth so much. I was primarily based out of Toronto, but working so much in Montreal. I was directing there and doing voice work. And I mean, the experience was terrific. I loved it. I was in demand. Everybody loves to be loved. And so it was a fun experience. I would go in to do that and do a bunch of other shows. And it was pretty simplistic stuff. You look at animation back then, 2D and very simple, much simpler dialogue. You didn't have the range that dialogue has today. I mean, it
Hmm.
wasn't quite as, the educational factor has been has been good and bad. Now you've kind of almost have to have an educational element in order for your series to be considered viable to show kids. Back then, it was just entertainment, but it was kind of fluff because it didn't have any sort of balls, if you will. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was entertaining, but that was it. Um, but today you've got to teach kids a lesson, right? Right and wrong, good and bad. There's all that stuff. And consequently, it's gotten a little whitewashed. But back then, it was just purely entertainment and silly, all different characters. Um, and today, even animation is like it's a lot straighter now. I mean, you can't do certain voices, you can't do most dialects. Um, because somebody's going to call you out for it, no matter how much you say, yeah, but it's a beautiful dialect. I love it. It's beautiful.
Mm.
You're going to get called out. And that's just the way the times are right now. And back then, doing the simple stuff like Richard Scarry was, it was fun. I mean, so if you're talking about my personal experience of going and doing it, it was great. And again, it led to my getting directing work there as well.
Oh, did it? Okay. What directing work did you do for that
Well,
company?
the big one was Caillou.
Oh, I did. Oh my god, I
Yeah,
can't believe like your credits list. It's one of those things. I tried not to like just list stuff off because we'd be here for. You've worked on a lot of things. Like
yeah,
your resume is insane. So I didn't want to just go through and list everything. That's crazy. So you directed Caillou.
yeah. And not every year I did. I think I did 3 years of it,
Hmm.
and it was a tough period because the girl who played Caillou was killed in a car accident.
Oh no! I
Yeah,
wow.
she was 15, and
Mm.
she was on her way to a film set in north of Montreal and was killed. Horrible. So she was replaced, and remember that was the whole time when they said, I think what's her name? Oh, trying to think of the Angelina Jolie actually apparently said, "I'm raising a kid. I won't allow him or her or whatever to watch Caillou because Caillou's too whiny." So they said to me, "Okay, this is kind of the opportunity to do that, albeit the cause of it is not in any way pleasant. But we're going to get a new Caillou, so we need Caillou to be less whiny." So that was I made Caillou less whiny. That's all.
That it's funny that you say that. My wife doesn't like Caillou for the same reason that you
Yeah,
mentioned. She always thought he was too whiny.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, but it's hard to get away from it because it was still being written that way,
Hmm.
right? And if you can't change the words, it's very difficult to change an attitude.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I like to think I was successful. Um, yeah, I directed a bunch of stuff there and was in a lot of stuff. So it was a good time. Cinar was a privately owned company and. The people were nice, like any other sort of smallish company. You know that it can either be really incestuous or really fun, right? It kind of goes to extremes.
Hmm.
Um, I got to tell you, it's just total sidebar. The guy who was the casting director for all of Cinar stuff, his name was Andy Grin,
Okay.
right? And Grynn, and he hired an assistant. Unfortunately, a young guy was here. We go again. Was found dead one day.
Jeez.
They don't even know why. Yeah, animation will kill you, and his name was I think it was Simon Barrett. So when you went to get to do casting, it was Grin and Barrett, which
Oh,
I thought I'll never get that out of my head. It was one of those things. It's like, oh my God, actually Grin and Barrett. Anyway, so anyway, God, I guess you can laugh now, and we're all going to be dead one day anyway. So when is
oh my goodness.
yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
there you go. That's the story from that era.
that's awesome. Like I said, that was one of my favorite shows as a kid. It was actually one of those ones where it was one of those shows where you watch as a kid a ton and then you forget about it for years and then you come back to it. And I've thought about it like I'm talking like I rediscovered it over a decade ago. Actually, before my daughter was born, I rewatched the whole show. I don't know why. I wonder if I was just trying to kind of get back into that mental state of childhood again before my daughter was born. But so who knows? But in speaking of voice directing, you mentioned you directed Caillou. Arguably, one of your biggest claims to fame is you did the American dub of Sailor Moon, or sorry, the English dub, not American dub, the English dub of Sailor Moon.
Yeah, the original dub. I was the primary voice director. There were three in total.
Hmm.
The first girl who played Sailor Moon was also the first voice director. She did about 13 shows. Tracy Moore. She
Okay.
had another project. They took a break. She took on another project, and then when they wanted to start again, they couldn't wait for her to come back and finish the other thing, whatever it was. So they hired Roland Parliament, and Roland took over, and that's when what's her name? The second Sailor Moon. She's the most popular one.
Oh, I don't know. I watched Sailor Moon a little bit when I was younger, and it's one like I liked it a lot, but it was one of those things where I couldn't tell you all. I know there's Sailor Venus, Sailor Mercury, Sailor Neptune, Sailor Mars, Sailor Jupiter. I just don't know which ones are the more popular ones because I was never into the. I was never part of the fandom.
I see. Terry Hawks, good lord, Terry Hawks became the next Sailor Moon after
Mm,
Tracy. Tracy, I said, did the first 12, 13 episodes, and then Terry Hawks came in, and she is arguably, because I do the con tour, write a lot of them, and I get asked, and
hmm.
who do you like the most, and I ask them, ask the fans of the show, and Tracy is by far the most popular, and
Tracy or Terry? Sorry.
Terry, sorry, Terry is by far the most popular. And then Linda Ballantyne came on, and she had a completely different take on Sailor Moon, and she seems to be the least favorite of the three. But some people, I guess, like her, and so anyway, I worked through. I guess what did I do? 2 or 3 years. I don't remember, two or
I mean,
three.
I see according to Wiki or IMDb, which like going through this, there's a lot of missing information on your IMDb page. That like
Yeah.
that's not on you, obviously. That's on them for not having it. But like it says you were the ADR director. It only lists 17 episodes on the original
Oh,
series,
no.
but then you also did a bunch of the movies as well.
I did the S series, the R series. Yeah. No.
Hmm.
Um, no, but those are one offs. No, I did a lot more than that. I think the most complete one is the Wikipedia uh,
Okay.
list of my credits. I don't know what they say. I just know what I did. I mean, it's I don't really doesn't really bother me. Um, and I was also Grandpa Hino, but in Sailor Moon, it was Ray's grandfather. He was a pervert. I'm proud to say. And yeah, so I did that. And I used to, I mean, the reason I was there the reason I got the directing job is because voice directing job is because um, the previous voice director, Roland, was relieved because because he smoked, he was a smoker. He didn't smoke in the studio. The producer
Hmm.
was always in the studio and she was pretty fussy, but he would take breaks to go out for a smoke. I mean, we all smoked at that time, right? We smoked then like it was a cure for cancer. And but she didn't like the fact that he was taking all those breaks. And then she turned to me and said, in her very francophone way, "John, you be next voice director." And I said, "What? Sorry." Anyway, this is long story short, if I may. That's how I got the gig. I said, "When do I have to decide?" "Right now." It's like, oh Christ. Anyway, I did, and it turned out to be the right choice because that was my first directing gig. And so, yeah, so
All right.
that's one of the things I talk about. I always when I do cons, one of my pet panels, and the one that gets the biggest response is ask the voice director of Sailor Moon the stuff you won't find on Google. So I talk about a lot of the petty issues and all the BS that went down and the difficulties and what performers really thought of the series, not what
Oh,
the.
so full candidacy. Can
Oh
be
yeah, sure, why not? What are they going to do? Hang me?
I mean, it's sometimes when I ask questions, I try not to put the people in spots where that's going to make them answer a question that's going to get them in trouble with someone else. So I'm very surprised. Like it's refreshing, in all honesty, to see someone being willing to be candid. Especially, I mean, the show was back in the '90s, so it's time has passed. So, like you said, what are they going to do?
Yeah, and the thing is too, right now it's like it's revered right now,
Hmm.
so that people will just hey, listen, I got to keep interest in myself if I'm going to make money at cons, and people love that, and I don't, I speak the truth. I don't. I try, if they ask me stuff, if it's personal, say, yeah, that's a personal issue, a personal response, but you make up your own mind. I mean, the big thing now is the comparison of um, the new version, right,
Hmm.
and the old one, and that takes up a ton of that hour of panel time, and it's fun. It's great. A matter of fact, the entire original cast was invited to the LAX con. That's the biggest con
Hmm.
in North America. We were invited down about 8 years ago, or it's 5 years ago, whatever it was, and we saw the first public showing of the new Sailor Moon episode one,
Oh,
and met with the original so the original cast met the old cast, and I met the new voice director, and it was a really good time, and we had like 120,000 people or something, just stupid.
that's crazy. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
Um, I could be here all day asking about specific credits. Like you were on Little Bear, you were on Rupert, you were like there. I love Rupert and Little Bear. There's so many on here. But what I actually want to transition into, because otherwise I'll just keep listing off your credits all day long. Um, what I would want to transition into now, though, is you haven't done just voiceover work; you do on camera work as
yeah.
well.
Mhm.
And looking into some of the stuff on your Wikipedia, as well as what I could find online. One of the first credits I could see is that you were part of a comedy troupe called Zoo Factory,
Yes.
and I saw on some pages it mentions it's a comedy troupe. Others say it's a children's comedy troupe. I just want to kind of know, what was Zoo Factory and what did you guys do?
Zoo Factory was just a group of people that were put together to work on. I think it was. I believe it was for Keith Hampshire's Music Machine. Keith Hampshire had the
I
big
saw
hit
that on
date.
Music Machine. Yeah.
Yeah, daytime. Yeah, Music Machine. Right. And matter of fact, I'm the guy that went Music Machine, starring Keith Hampshire, Doctor Music. That was the intro, the live intro I'd give every week when we recorded. And then Zoo Factory, we just did some fun stuff, crazy stuff that was, rehearsed, a little bit of free form in it, of course, but. It was that was a lot of fun, and doing that kind of springboarded me into like more on camera work that was really great, because I did a show called Dr. Zonk and the Zunkins.
Okay.
I was inside a box at the movie. Oh, it's so simplistic. It was frightening, but the Zunkins, I was one of the Zunkins, Zoe and Duncan, or Zoe and Duncan.
Yeah, it says you were Duncan on
Yeah,
IMDb.
that's right. And the other one was John Candy. And so,
Oh,
yeah, so that's where John and I met. And then that kind of, the director, the director of that series, was hired by Canadian Broadcasting Corporation to direct another series. 2 year, well, Dr. Zonk and the Zunkets, I think, ran 2 years, I think. And then Coming Up Rosie came on, and that was kind of my big on camera break. Although I'd been doing little bits and pieces, that was when John again was hired. Johnny and I became like the best of friends. We were inseparable for a couple of years.
hmm,
Wonderful, wonderful human being. And Dan Aykroyd, Gilda Radner. Um,
a lot of the
oh my God.
SCTV
Oh my
people.
God. Oh yeah. They were all either regulars or guests. Eugene Levy and Joe Flaherty, Dave Thomas. Um, man, it was really some. Catherine O'Hara was a regular.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I mean,
And this was all pre SCTV. This is all Coming Up
yes,
Rosie.
yep,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
And then when SCTV started, um, I can tell you a funny little story if you want.
By all means, go into
Okay,
it.
okay. I was living, living downtown on my own. Wasn't married at the time. I don't believe either that or I don't know. I don't believe I was married. Anyway, I get a call 2 o'clock in the morning, and I hear John, you up? I said, well, Johnny, what's up? And it was John Candy calling. I said, what, everything okay, man? He said, yeah. What are you doing? I said, well, sleeping. Can you come to the studio? And I said, what? What are you talking about? And he said, we're trying to get this thing. It's an introduction and it's an announcer. And we all think you're the guy to do this and none of us can get it. I said, yeah, okay. What studio? And he said, Eastern Sound, Toronto. No longer there. Eastern Sound,
Hmm.
just a plaque. But it was a fabulous, fabulous studio. So I got in my car and I drove over. I got there at, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning. And they said, here's the script. And I looked it over and I said, okay, they said, what do you think? And I said, do you want me to just wail on it and give you what I think? And I did. Now, it's since a number of years ago, it was replaced because Second City was done in Toronto for 2 years and then in Edmonton, Alberta for 2 years because it
Okay.
was cheaper to do it. And they hired another, again, because there was no digital, they hired another guy to announce. So they had two different announcers, and ultimately both he and I were replaced by a third guy. But if you look at the old episodes, I believe you will still hear there were 6 people who loved to watch television, but they didn't like what they saw. That was the intro of it. And so, and everybody jumped up and down, Eugene and I think Marty Short and whoever was there. And they said, yeah, that's it. Oh my God, that's it. So that I got the intro, and then I was going in every week to do what are known as interstitials. So before
Hmm.
every skit, I would do, they called him Yellow Belly. And so I do accents and voices and stuff that to just introduce those things. And, another little voice snippets throughout the each episode of the series. So that was like my start of getting into that on camera thing, and then the transition again into the voice stuff, which I did, you know, that's why I still do. I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
still doing camera stuff. But
I oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I
no,
was
no,
just
no,
going to
you
say
didn't.
I even saw you had a IMDb. Well, it wasn't on IMDb. So I have a bone to pick with IMDb. But as recently I saw you did some work with Cloris Leachman back in 2020
That's right. I did. Yeah,
for Jump Darling.
right. It's a good little movie. Yeah, it was Cloris Leachman's last feature role. Uh,
Hmm.
and man, oh man, that I got to work with Frau Blucher. Just
Hmm.
man, oh man, it was like Wow, it was just great, watching her in Young Frankenstein and thinking of her.
Yeah.
Yes, he was my boyfriend.
Oh, I haven't seen. I need to rewatch. It's been a while since I've watched that movie. I need to rewatch it now.
It's just so silly. And I
It's
worked with actually who played Frankenstein. What's his name? Peter Boyle.
Peter Boyle.
Yeah, I did a
Yeah,
movie with
you were
him.
in a movie with him and Michael Keaton
Right.
and
Yeah.
shoot, I forget the name of it. I looked it
Uh,
up on your IMDb though.
yeah, it's called. Yeah. Okay. I should know what it is.
It's fine. I'm looking it up too.
Are
I
you?
know it was in the 90s.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Anyway, that was fun to work with him. It was one little scene, but it was great and funny. I still get residuals. Honest to God.
Really?
Yeah, 4 times a year I'll get a little check. Sometimes it's $150, and sometimes it's $4 and eighty
The Dream
cents.
Team.
Dream Team, correct, correct.
Yeah,
Thank you.
with Christopher Lloyd, Peter Boyle,
Yeah,
Stephen First, and Michael Keaton.
right. And I get nothing. They don't say my name, so what are you gonna? Well, at
uh,
least I still get residuals. Peter Boyle does not.
no, no, he does not. No, he does not. Oh my goodness. Um, let me see. Let me see what else I have for you here. Uh, I guess between voiceover work and on camera work, I mean, obviously, the most of your career so far has been on VO. What do you like about, like, I guess, what are the pros and cons of, I guess, both? Like, what do you enjoy about your voiceover work and also about your on camera work? And what are things that you wish the other would have?
Okay, for me, there's really no comparison. I mean, on camera, I get a little bit nervous still because I don't have the
Hmm.
faith in myself.
Mm,
Because it's never been a regular thing, and it's never been other than right at the very, very beginning of my career when I was 21, right? And that's oh man, that's 21, 56 years ago,
hmm.
right? That's a long freaking time, you know. But it was, that was my mainstay. It was before I even knew what voice work was. Although, I was always doing funny voices, but um, I was going to be an actor. And I was, I think, probably better then. Now, when I send in an audition or go in for an audition, I'm still nervous, and I don't have the confidence in myself, and I have trouble memorizing lines. I hate memory work.
Mm.
And so it's something I will do, and it's fine. And I do like it when I get on, when I get on set, and maybe get to work with somebody who's a bit of an idol or a hero, or you can, right, just like that. It's a different. I mean, it's so very different in terms of because you're always working with the people. They're there. The people you're working with are all there. All the actors are there. You're going to do voice work, and it's all done one at a time now. 99% is performer, performer, performer. They don't call everyone in. It's very, very seldom that ensemble work is done because it
Mm.
costs too much money. You're going to have if you've got 6 people working, you're going to have them in there for probably 8 hours. So you're paying 6 people for 8 hours instead of calling somebody in. You're in for an hour. Now there's a minimum, of course. I think there's a minimum 4 hour, whatever it is. But it's just
Yeah.
less expensive, and they don't have to set up all the mics, and nobody talks over somebody else, or if somebody's laughing or somebody farts. It does, you don't have to stop everything and go to the beginning again, right? So it's done very, very differently. Again, this plays on why a voice director is so important because you got one performer in reading all his or her lines.
You kind of have to keep the tone in your
You,
head of how
you
everyone is.
do absolutely because you also have to know what that performer's line, uh, why it's delivered. They think of the handoff to deliver that
Mm.
line, and that line's handoff to the next person, right? So you've got to have every line's read in your head. So you can't just go in and just read your lines. That's why performers are given an entire script. You're not
Hmm.
just given your lines because it'd be all over the map. But I like it because I don't know, it's not that I've run away from the fame and everything else. I love when people recognize me, and that's ego. I mean, we all love that.
Yeah.
I'd be a liar
Hmm.
if I said, I know I'd be a liar if I said, oh, oh please, no, it's nothing really. I'm just a working guy like everybody else. Well, I'm not, because it's one of those ones where people, Jesus, they track me down, and they want to know about this and how do you do that and why this and can I get a picture and sign this, and it's fun, it's nice, it's a huge ego boost. It is. I love it. I feel, it's, I mean, I make money at it. That's important. I do free stuff because that's part of the gig.
Hmm.
Um, you just, I mean, I revel in the fact that I'm a voice actor, and it's a very comfortable position. I've never reveled in the fact that I was an on-camera actor.
Mm, I gotcha.
It's my strength. It's what I love to do. Um, you know, I think I've been recognized in my life for on-camera work 3 times, and that was, I think, for Coming Up Rosie, and that's a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and nobody, but nobody, is, falling. If I'm walking behind someone, they don't go, "Hey, aren't you the voice of so and so?"
Toad?
Yeah, yeah. No, I don't think so.
Oh, I
So
mean, it's good to be like I've talked about this like not on mic or anything, but I think there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, and I
mm,
think that that's what you need to straddle to be to whether in any creative medium. Like if you want to be a good collaborator, you shouldn't let your arrogance get in the way, but you also
correct,
shouldn't, you know, like you said, you've done a lot of work in the animation industry. You've done things that people like, and it's good. It's you should be proud of that. You should be
mm,
confident in your abilities because of that. But
right,
then at the same time, the same thing like as a it's not one to one, and I'm not comparing accomplishments by any stretch of the imagination. But with my podcast here, it's been going on for 10 years, and I've been growing it, and this and that. So, do I think I'm a good podcaster? Absolutely. I've had 10 years of practice at it
right,
at the very least, and I'm still learning. Does that make me a better podcaster than someone who just started like a month ago? That I mean depends, but arguably no.
probably, but
You
not
never know.
necessarily. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
not indicative of their talent or anything of that. It's just that I have a 10-year head start type of thing,
correct. And
and.
experience is a great teacher.
Mhm. So I think it's a very healthy mindset to be confident, know that you are good at something, but also
Yeah,
never, but realize that other people are also good at it, type of thing.
yeah,
And I think the vibe I've gotten from what you're saying there is kind of very much speaks to that.
yeah. As long as you don't say, "Don't you know who I am?" You know,
I
and
host a podcast. Don't you know who I am?
yeah,
That
right.
you've probably never heard of before. um, I let me see what else. I have a few other questions for you if you still have some time.
Sure.
You know what? I have a yeah. I'll wrap up with these few questions here. So since you are a voice actor, I ask this to every voice actor, and I know it's a question you've got many times before, but since I do have people who want to be voice actors who listen to the show. If you could offer, it doesn't have to be one bit of advice, like or the most important thing, but if you could offer just like one or two bits of advice for prospective voice actors, like what's something that maybe you wish you would have known when you first started out compared to what you know now, and what type of advice could you offer for someone looking to get into the industry?
That's a broad spectrum question, but I'll pick away at it. I mean, the industry has changed, I think, very much now. Um, it's, I'll tell you, I look at, I'm on LinkedIn like everybody else, and there are tens of thousands of voiceover. Everybody's a voiceover actor, and half of the voiceover actors are voice directors. It's a tough game. That
Mm.
said, and I do get asked that one all the time because one of my other panels is, so you want to be a voice actor, blah,
I
blah,
watched a
blah.
snippet of that. That's one of the interviews I
Yeah.
went
And
back
it's,
to.
I don't discourage anyone. Anybody can be a voice actor, anyone can be successful. You don't know. But in the old days, with a smaller pool, that was an advantage. It's one of the reasons I can't imagine anybody today getting a earning a longer list of credits than I have. I'm sure there
Hmm.
are a few people out there with longer ones, but I've got to be in the top 5% or 2%. But, and that's not bragging. Those are facts. It's because
Yeah.
the talent pool was tiny. So they would come. Just doesn't mean we were any better or worse or anything, but it was tiny, and they were happy with what they got. You listen to all those old shows, and then sure, there are other people who could do those roles, but there were a handful of us who could do everything as well. Just they didn't. There weren't as many choices out there, and so that's that was great. Today it's a struggle. You go in. I mean, I've heard. I, I'm not going to tell you where it came from, but somebody said it was a thank you to all the people who auditioned. Well, thank you so much. It was a commercial audition. Uh,
Hmm.
After listening to 240 auditions,
Oh my gosh.
it's like 240 auditions. What? How? What are you nuts? You know,
Yeah.
25 maybe. Maybe 25. I don't know, 10%, 20% of that, maybe. You can't tell me you couldn't find somebody. I'm sorry. That's you're sorry, you're just stroking yourself because you don't
Hmm.
need to do that. You don't, but that's the way it is now. You got to justify the Bloody Marys and the sushi or something that you're going to. So um, it's a tough, tough game, and you can
Yeah.
be really, really good and not get anywhere. And although you can, if you're average, you can do a few things because everybody does themselves the best.
Yeah.
And so you can do a little bit, but probably not be successful in the long run. Um, so, and it's tough. People try to be everything to everyone. You can't do that anymore either. Because again, everybody, there's just too much competition to try to be someone else. Because that other person really is going to be there. Someone who just steps right into it because that's the way they
Hmm.
talk when they open their eyes in the morning. So that's not to say to anybody, don't try it, because it's the most important thing is, do you want to do something? That's life short. Get out there and try it. What's the worst thing that can happen? You fail. Does it mean you're a bad person or that you're a failure at living or that you're not a good father or that you're a bad this or other? It means nothing other than an excellent voice over artist. That's all.
Hmm.
It's small on the grand scheme of things. It's really minimal too. Go and invent a cure for cancer. Stop war. Right? There. Uh, Not to belittle what it is, because it's and entertainment's vital. I mean, during the Great Depression, if they didn't have those live shows, I think there'd have been more people jumping out of 17-story windows. But uh,
Hmm.
right, but try it, but don't let it be the guide for your life. If you want to you want to get better, I advise get a good teacher. I'm not patting myself in the back here. I'd love people to call me and say, "Hey, will you teach me?" I'm probably,
Hmm.
and you can get any, people from anywhere from $35 an hour to 200 and whatever dollars an hour. Most of them, the price indicates their worth, right?
Hmm.
It's just the way it is. Um, get a good teacher, but work with it. Don't, just interview them. Call that person. Say, can you give me 15 minutes on a Skype or a telephone call?
Yeah.
Talk to me. What do you want? Okay. Do you want to know where I want to go? I want to know what your method is. I want to know, are you driven? I mean, do you drive people? Do you soft pedal? All of those things. Find yourself a good compatible teacher. It's like shopping. You should shop for a doctor, right? Or
Hmm.
anything else. If you want to be an auto mechanic, you're not going to go to the first mechanic that says, "Yeah, you can work here," right? You go and you look around for somebody that maybe has a whatever better. Well, this guy knows how to work on transmissions. So that's my personal love. So you go there. Also, know that at some point you have to make a union decision. You have to make an agent decision. You have to have a good demo. You have to have a good demo, and not a long one. You can have a good, crisp demo that says, "Hi, this is my vocal calling card." You do need that because that's going to sell you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can put together a good demo if you've got some editing equipment. But when you get in there, you've got to be as good as that demo. So don't BS on the demo and do something that's all chopped up and makes you sound like you're the greatest voice on earth. Be honest. Put a good
Mm-hmm.
demo together that really says what you are. Because if you go in and you can't duplicate the style that they're looking for, or you can't, if you've got an engineer who's tweaked your voice so much that you sound like this little weird little creature if you're doing an animation demo, well, you know, you can't just go in and say that's me, because anybody's voice can be enhanced and changed and
Mm-hmm.
adapted and adjusted. So honesty is, well, it's a good motto for life. Always be honest, but know that there's competition, and above all, I think know that if you're considered, if you are, if you get an agent, and that agent sends you out and sends you out and you get nothing, don't be disheartened, because the agents know good from bad. There are so many people knocking on their doors on a regular basis that if they didn't think you were good and can do the job, they wouldn't have you on their roster. So
Mm-hmm.
the whole idea is to be considered in that elite group. Yeah, it's down to four. Oh, I'm always down to four, the four finalists. Well, you're as good as the other three. You just, you don't, because final four, you're all great. You all did a fabulous job. It's just not exactly what they're looking for. You have to understand that. So don't be too hard on yourself either. Um, all of those
Mm-hmm.
factors play in. It's a great business. You can make a lot of money if you hit it right. Very few people hit that sweet spot where they're making 200 large a year.
Yeah. And I think your insight is very valuable too, not just because of your experience within the industry, but the fact that you've worked on both sides of it,
Yeah,
directing and acting. So that's very helpful for any of my listeners who I've had a few guests on who are voice actors who've done some small bits of professional work and whatnot. And so hopefully some of this will help them as well.
great.
Um,
So,
what I want to wrap up this interview with, I have two final questions for you. What I wrap up all my interviews with. One, I'm going to kick the first one off with is I'm a fan of Alan Alda's podcast, Clear and Vivid, and he ends his interviews with 7 questions that invite 7 quick answers. I'm not going to ask all 7 questions. I just pick a few that I think are that can be applied to a lot of different people here. Um, so the question I'm going to ask you out of that is, what book changed your life?
Tuesdays with Maury.
Tuesdays with Mark. Okay, what is that about?
But Mitch Albom is a sports writer, and he interviewed a guy who was, I think, 90. Uh,
Mm.
and he would fly in to talk to this guy, and he was old, and he's just so wise. And he spoke like, well, Maury, dude, would you like to be 60 again? No, been 60, been 70, been 80. I love where I am right now. And just this honesty that came through was just, to me, so touching. And it's really helped me. I mean, I'm going to be 77 in 6 weeks, and pretty much got all my marbles. I'm very active. I live rurally. I cut down trees. I wear high heels. Oh, that's another song. Uh, I'm active. I physically so, and and just listening to this guy. I mean, a lot of those things were important. And again, we talked earlier before you recorded, about living rurally. I think everybody should live rurally for a while. Uh, I think that would be a great help. And though Maury lived in town, I think he was a New Yorker. Um, just his what he taught Mitch, right, and
Hmm.
also the people who read the book was just love every day, live every day, do the best you can, right? It's basically, we're all doing the best we can, no matter
Hmm.
what it is. But this moment, we're doing the best we can. And
I
that's,
like that.
yeah, it's beautiful.
I might check that out because that's something that, like, I don't know, I not that I struggle with, but I think it's trying to be happy for where you are at and your present in the present, and not like necessarily long for what you don't have type of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
it's
that's super
wonderful
important.
to sure, but yeah, I mean, it's great to want stuff. It's great you want to do better. I mean, I'm a believer in a lot of those corny things. I mean, like visualizing, and a lot of things come. Oh, my wife and I are really good with doing this. It doesn't always happen, but you can reach a rough spot, say financially or in some way, and we visualize what's going to happen, and we focus on it, and we writing down stuff, listing things, and saying, and don't say I want to be so and so. I am so and so,
Hmm.
and you tell yourself that because you know, it all comes from the mind, and the mind generates so much. And then again, this book seemed to say that to me. Not that I haven't, done other. I listen to podcasts and a lot of forward thinkers or sort of spiritual thinkers, not necessarily religious speakers, but spiritually
Hmm.
uplifting messages. And that's you you can, because our mind tells us something. It tells us and we follow it. It's such a strong element. Tell yourself, I will be successful. This job, I have already gotten this job. And
Yeah.
you know it's amazing how it drives you forward. And I know a lot of people are going to go, oh, that's a bunch of horse shit. Well, you know what, for some people it is, and then if that's your attitude, don't do it. But I find it can be very positive, just in a general life force.
It reminds me of I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan, and Kevin Smith he would tell a story about before he wrote Clerks and all that other stuff. Um he was considering being a screenwriter, and he would talk to his sister about it, and his sister's like, yeah, go, like, he would say, wouldn't that be cool if I was a screenwriter? And she's like, well, then just go do it. And he's like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? He's like, you're just a screenwriter that hasn't wrote a screenplay yet.
Right.
And that was kind of how she helped him self-actualize without really calling it
Mhm.
self-actualization type of thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
um and you kind of touched on this a little bit before this. I don't know if this is a perfect transition to it, but like or not transition, but tie in. But when I was asking you about, what perspective or what advice would you offer to prospective voice actors, and you mentioned, like, don't be like, try it, don't be afraid to try it, but don't also understand like the realities of like what you're going up against, not in like an ominous way, but just that
Well,
this
it's
is what
true. I mean,
this is
yeah.
what you have. And one of the other things I enjoy that Kevin Smith has said before is that the kind of like the why not philosophy. Just like, hey, do you want to do this? Why not? Just you
Mhm.
surround yourself with why not people, not anyone
Yeah.
who's going to be a yes man and just tell you yes to everything. And obviously, you don't want the opposite, because then you'll never do anything. Everyone's going to say no to you all the time. But kind of live with a why not philosophy, see what
Yeah.
happens, and that type of thing. I like that philosophy a lot.
Well, you know what? They all say kind of the same thing in a different way. You look for someone who says it best to you, be it Wayne Dyer or Brooke Castillo or Deepak Chopra or Tony Robbins or Brene Brown. They all have the same thoughts. They all, they're positive.
Hmm.
You think positively, that's what manifests itself.
Yeah.
It does. It just does. So, I mean, for a fact, I'm never going to die. Well, that's not going to happen because that's beyond us. But what we do while we are alive, in so many ways. I mean, and again, if you've got cystic fibrosis and you're in a wheelchair, you will never win 100-mile, 100-yard race. You won't.
Hmm.
But there's so many other things. I mean, we all have, certain limitations. Many of them we can break down, and many of them we can't. But you understand what you are and work within that a little bit. Don't be afraid to step outside that circle.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really important. You have to drive yourself. You can't say, I feel like crap. I'm just going to stay in bed. Well, you know what? You can give into that 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, but you better not make it a habit, or
No,
things going to happen.
allow yourself to recharge from that and move on. I'm with you. I'm
Yeah.
with you on that.
So,
My final question for you. This is actually from my wife. My wife, Courtney, famously, to my listeners, famously, I should say, is not into any of the stuff that I'm into, video games, anime, cartoons. Oh, she does like some cartoons. So this section here is questions from Courtney. Da 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 da. Questions from Courtney. Um, and her question that I ask is always something that has completely out of left field. So her out of left field question here is, what's your favorite tree?
hmm, a paper bark maple.
A paper bark maple. Okay, I'm gonna have to look up a picture of this.
Yeah, do it. It's the bark peels, even when it's young. It starts peeling back layers, and it looks like it's going to die, but it's like very much alive. I'm trying to find another one. I left it.
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's just sort of remarkable that this thing that looks dead is absolutely not. It just keeps on going.
It's just thriving.
Yeah, it's just an interesting look. I'm going to
That's
find
really cool.
another one. I'm going to find another one somewhere. I live around the corner from a large nursery up here, and I'm going to go and it's a matter of fact, it's the one I got the other one from years ago. I'm going to go and see if they have another one there.
That's really, it's funny because, we were, like you said before, we were talking about living in a rural area. So when my wife sent me this question, I was like, all right, we'll see how this goes. But then I'm like, oh, you live in a rural area. I would assume you have to have a favorite tree if you live out
Yeah,
somewhere
I've got a
rural.
few of them. I got a few of them. Red buds, weeping variegated, a weeping tricolor beech.
Oh my gosh, there's another
Yeah.
one that I have to look
Oh
up.
man. Oh, weeping tricolor beech. They are just spectacular.
I will have to look
So
that one up
when
as
you're
well.
getting ready to move to the country, you're going to contact me again, and I'm going to give you all kinds of advice. I've
Oh
been
man,
rural for 32 years now, and I will never look back.
we'll see. I mean, unfortunately, it just depends on radius to my job as well
Yep.
as price. So we'll see how that
And
goes.
usually rural properties are less expensive. People want to live in the city.
Yeah, but not me. I like having open
Oh,
areas.
it's beautiful. I keep saying I don't want to know what my neighbor's having for breakfast.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got
I feel
six
you.
acres here, and it's lovely, and but you don't need 6 acres, 2, 3 acres, if you've got like the right situation, trees around you and stuff, and you don't see anybody. I
Yeah,
look out now and I just see these hills with trees, and I'm looking at it right now at my office window.
it's very like that's. I mean, I live in the suburbs right now. That's why one of the reasons I take a lot of nature walks is to kind of get away from all the houses and stuff. It's just
Yeah,
very
yep,
soothing and peaceful.
it is.
But John, we're going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I really enjoyed this conversation. And the actually, I mean, it's not a question, but the last thing I ask of you though, where can the good people find you online, or if you are to be found online? Is there anything you'd like to promote? You can shout it all out here.
Well, I can, sure. My website, it's in transition right now, so don't. If you have some issues with it, I'm in a bit of a bind with the guy who runs it, so I don't know where it's going to go. But I will always have johnstalker.ca,
Hmm.
JOHNSTOCKER.ca, because I'm a Canuck. Or I don't mind if people contact me directly at John Stalker, JOHNSTOCKER, at Bellnet, BELLNET.ca. John Stalker at Bellnet.ca. I'm available for acting roles if they're union. I am available to voice directing, voice casting, and lessons in either commercial or animation. So there you go.
All right, listeners, I will have a link to his website in the show notes, as well as also I've actually found your website initially through your Instagram page.
Ah, yes,
Excuse me.
Instagram. I forgot about that. Yeah, my daughter helps me with my Instagram, bless her soul. And, I'm on Cameo as well. So she got me in there. You know what Cameo is? It's,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yeah.
right. Yeah.
I'll,
So, yeah, I can forget about Instagram because I'm not a Luddite. I love technical stuff, but I'm intimidated by it.
I can
So,
understand that.
yeah, I wasn't raised in it, but I love it. Oh my God. I mean, doing the work, I do voice work and voice directing without, you come to one of my Sailor Moon panels and I'll tell you how we used to do it. Oh my God. What a difference. It's like, you know, wow.
hmm
Yeah.
hmm
It's like pushing a car up a hill and getting into a Lamborghini, right? The difference.
Well, for listeners, if you want to find him on Instagram, his Instagram handle, is John Stalker Creative. I will include a link to that as well in the show notes. And yeah, John, thank you for joining me. As usual, for myself, listeners, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, all that stuff at Still Loading Pod. If you want to find it on YouTube, it's at Still Loading Podcast. You can support the show in a number of ways. You can give it a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or all that good stuff. Whichever podcasting app you use, it helps more people find the show, and it pleases the algorithm gods, and it'll hopefully push my show to other people. There's also a Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. For $1 a month, you get all the episodes like this one a little bit earlier with better audio quality, along with patron voting rights, where you can help guide the direction of the show with quarterly polls for games that I see what my audience wants me to play and cover on the show. There's a $3 level where you get everything I mentioned prior, but also patron shout outs at the beginning of the episode, like you heard at the beginning of this episode. For $4 a month, you get everything I mentioned prior, plus 2 mini bonus episodes. And for $5 a month, you get all that stuff, the bonus episodes, the early release, the patron voting rights, the patron shout outs. And you also get my monthly movie podcast, which right now is called Still Bonding, where me and a bunch of friends bond over 007. The time this episode comes out, I think this is still going to be the month that Skyfall is coming out. So we're getting close to the end of Still Bonding, and we'll be moving on to a new movie franchise after that, which I think is Fast and Furious. So yeah, that's it. That's over at patreon.com/stillloadingpod. But that's all I got for you. John, thank you once again for joining me.
And Josh, thank you so very much. I hope that what I've said is of some value to your listeners. It was a really excellent interview. Thank you truly for asking some questions that I'm not normally asked, like my favorite tree, for example. But
I
other
mean,
than that, no, it was a good in-depth one that went to a couple of different places where I'm not normally led, and I thank you for that good interview. So
thank you. Thank you. That really means a lot.
very welcome. I mean it. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody. Hope to hear from anybody interested. If you just want to talk, that's good too.
And I will think of you whenever I see a paper bark maple from now on. For that, that's for damn sure. So, yes, that's it for this episode, everyone. Thank you all for listening, and I will see you all next time.